going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the special meeting for the Board of Finance for the town of Andover, Connecticut, and that differs from the regular meetings in a couple of respects. Primarily, the main thing is that we do not have the opportunity to modify or change the budget in any way, which means that we can only discuss and act upon items that are on, I'm sorry, not on the budget, but on the agenda. We have to stick with the agenda. We can't make any changes to items that are on the agenda. So we do have to stay basically with the agenda items. There is an opportunity for board open discussion at the end, but we obviously can't take action on anything that's not specifically listed in the agenda or covered in the agenda. So that being said, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, the Republic, stands one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and for all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our agenda item number 2, which is public speak. Eric?
Okay, the only people I see on this meeting that are potentially here for public speak would be Ashley or Bill DeRosiers. Do either of you want to say anything in public speak not related to elections?
No.
Okay.
Who's the 860 number?
Yep. Okay, and who is number 8984 phone number?
That's me, Linda. For some reason, I couldn't get into the Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And I also don't know how to mute or unmute being on the phone.
Okay. Well, I can mute you if you so choose. But I'd rather not, because then I won't know to unmute you because I can't see you.
Okay.
So you're gonna have
I'll
to
just
stay
keep my
unmuted.
mouth shut.
Okay. And the last person is Kimberly Person.
Yes. Can you hear me?
We got
Yeah, we're getting a
background
lot of
noise.
background noise though. Kim.
Yeah. Anybody
I'll
know
mute
what that is?
myself.
There we go.
Okay, did you have anything you wanted to add in public speak though, Kimberly?
Nothing at this time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
That would be it for public speak.
thank you. Agenda item number 3 is the town administrator's report. Eric, it's yours.
Okay, I didn't submit a formal written report this time. I'm running a little slow because I'm working from home because I'm still healing from leg surgery. So 2 things. One, Jay Tuttle will be on later, but he's not going to be able to be on till around 7:30 because he's picking up his father at the airport. And he just texted me that he should be able to be on by 7:30. So that's that. The second thing is we are sending out to all the boards and commissions and departments their budget sheets for next year. As you all may remember, usually the first step in the budget process is I process the numbers I can, and each department head and each board and commission head has to give us their own numbers back for the budget. One of the things I've asked them to do this time is we've given them an Excel spreadsheet so they can just put the numbers directly in the Excel spreadsheet, and then that spreadsheet then gets plugged directly back in by the treasurer into the overall budget. So that will hopefully make life a little easier. Other than that, obviously it's early enough. We don't have a lot of budget data. I did present to the Board of Selectmen what I thought was kind of a big picture look at the major things that were going to affect next year's budget. What I don't want to really go over that with you, but I will be happy to forward that to all the Board of Finance members so you can review it. It's really just a one over the world look at kind of what are the big things, that affect our budget right now, and how do I see them playing out. The kind of last thing I wanted to do is I put a budget to actual in the packet, but I want to share a budget to actual as of today that I got from the treasurer. And just more so that you all understand what format you can expect to see it in the future. And if there are things you want to change about the format and how it's presented, let us know and we can do that. So I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. Hopefully I can get the right thing because I got way too many things up at the moment. Let's see if that's it. All right, no, that's an agenda.
Let's see the agenda.
Okay, there we go. You should be looking hopefully at something that says profit and loss versus actual.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a basic form you're going to get every month, presuming that this is okay. The first part is income. There's not going to be anything on there for income yet, but we will have that within the next 2 weeks or so, the income fully transferred over, to the profit and loss. And then the second part is the expense side, which is everything we have for expenses. And so the other thing to keep in mind is I did reorder the way it appears. I haven't changed any of the line items at this point in the budget to actual for this year, because basically what you passed for a budget is what you have to be looking at in terms of a budget. So while they're reordered, everything that was in last year's budget is located here. It's just reorganized. So it's, to me, it makes more sense, some of the categories. And I tried to group like with like so that you could see it easily. The good news is we're doing reasonably well financially at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this sent to you, just so that you have it. And you can look through it. And if you have any questions about it, send them back to me. And if there's anything in here that you all really don't like, let me know. And, we can talk about how to change it and make it reflect what you want. So I'm just kind of giving you a heads up that you will get this in the next couple days. I didn't want to send it to you right before the meeting because I didn't kind of want to distract you about that. So I'm going to stop share. And then the question I have for you is, do you all have any questions for me? You're muted, Mark.
Thank you. Dog was barking earlier. So I would like to kind of, this is from QuickBooks?
This is from QuickBooks, yes.
Okay. And it's not a big deal to resort and reorder as needed, as you were able to do to make it more logical in your view.
Yeah, it's just a question of how you present, the data is all organized. It's just a question of how you present it.
Yeah. Okay. And where are we in the process, I guess, with the finalization of this with Cheryl?
We're pretty far along. So the first really good news is we were able to resolve the outstanding issues in the 2020-21 budget. If you remember, the auditor threw up his hands and there was about an $80,000 difference between what we had reconciled and what we had for a bank balance. Cheryl's been able to track down almost all of that. We're down to a difference of around $300. And we're not going to do anything heroic to find the last $300 of discrepancy between those two. So that's been done. We have, she's gotten most of the information, all the information she needs for the reconciliation. She's starting to go through the reconciliation month by month now. And we've reconciled most of the smaller funds like Norton Fund and the Sprague Fund and all the little stuff. So she is thinking that basically by January, sometime in middle of January, she'll be able to turn it over completely to the auditor, with most of the work done. So it should be a fairly quick audit once we turn it over. So even though we are going to be still quite late in turning it over, it should go fairly smoothly. And so far, there doesn't seem to be anything that's really crazy or out of line or we can't understand at this point. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we're at.
That's a good update on the audit too. So, other questions for Eric, Joanne?
Has she come forth, Eric? I mean, clearly we're having her work on these things because there was an issue with who was in those positions before and, got us kind of, again, in a bad spot. So without saying too much about personnel or things like that, but has she come up with how this could have happened yet again without, because she's doing everything she promised us, with getting her on board and coming in clearly and working on it. And I feel like each month we get a great update. She came on with us last month, explaining things. So is she even digging deep to see how we could have gotten, how with two finance personnel working in your town offices? I'm so used to saying board, in your town offices, that it got to this level. Is she seeing maybe there wasn't enough training, there wasn't enough really knowledge in how to do this kind of work?
I can't tell you what the exact, collectively between the two of them, they just made a lot of mistakes and a lot of things didn't get transferred over or really checked. That's really kind of the bottom line. There was a bunch of duplication and there were a bunch of things that never made it to the reconciliation. So, and to be perfectly honest, it's really the job of the finance director to sort that out. So if there's blame to be had, I'm not saying that both,
And I never want to be
either
a
were
person.
perfect.
Yeah, I totally never want to be a person of blame, but I would feel remiss as an elected official, or on this board, not asking the question. Because we had such high hopes. I listened to 2 years of, combining, what we were going to do. And then, so I feel like we owe it in this forum, now that we're getting it straightened out in such a short amount of time. And working in the field myself and my job, you do things like that. And there are checks and balances. You put yourself on a schedule, you get yourself going. It's hard so that's, it's not, I'm glad we're moving forward. I'm glad we brought in a person that seems very capable and is doing a great job of straightening it out. And then I hope moving forward, we'll provide all of the training to the new staff and personnel that are, brought on board. That's all. But it needs to be said. We can't just throw it under the rug again without bringing it up. So thank you.
Understood. And then the last thing, just so that you are all aware, most of you probably know by now, but Sherry Holmes has resigned her position at the elementary school as the finance director for the elementary school. My understanding is that Laura Edwards, who was the previous finance director for the elementary school, or actually technically the business manager, has stepped in an interim until they can hire a person to replace her. So that is ongoing.
I had not heard that. Is that immediate,
Did
effective?
not know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
not at all. Until
So-
today, I actually heard it today and I was like in high shock about it because we had not heard word one.
Yeah. She actually informed me 4 or 5 days before she left. I had heard through the grapevine that the school had posted an advertisement for their replacement, but I hadn't heard anything official until she told me just before I, went out on medical.
Hmm.
So,
Thank you, Eric. No, I did hear that and, just in an email that I got today. So I was surprised. So I actually asked it because it was a secondary question to me. And then I did ask the question, is Derek resign? I'm pretty directed forward. I'm like, oh, this is happening because. So, and I understand. I'm sorry. I didn't even know you were out on medical. I get that. I literally, and I don't mind saying it, I've ducked COVID for 2.5 years, worn a mask everywhere, very, and I had my first bout with COVID a few weeks ago. But I mean, luckily mild, so there's a lot of things going around and people are in and out of offices. But yeah, I was shocked to hear about Sherry.
yeah. So I should be back in the office full time starting Monday. I've just, I had foot surgery, so I'm kind of on the tail end of that.
No, good. No. Other questions for Eric? Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll move into draft budget. Eric, I mean, you already addressed this partially, but
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I wanted to say is I had sent, I believe, both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance just the preliminary schedule, of dates which mirrored last year as to when things needed to happen. What were the hard dates we had to meet? We're early enough in the process. Neither board has to approve it or really even think about it. I just sent that, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago as an FYI, so you had that information.
when did you send that,
Obviously,
Eric?
I think I sent it somewhere maybe third week in November, something like that.
I don't remember seeing that.
No?
You had sent a draft budget report.
The draft budget report should have had 2 items in it. One was what I was forwarding to all the boards and commissions as far as what information I wanted them to provide. Because one of the things I'm doing this year is I'm asking them all to formally,
it in
not just
Excel.
give us a budget, but give us a budget explanation of why, so we can compile all that. So by the time you get it, you at least have their thoughts on why they need what they need, on a department by department level. And the second thing on there should have been a proposed schedule.
Did you send it to the entire board? I may have missed it, but I don't see it. Anybody else see it?
I thought I did, but I mean, it's possible I screwed the pooch on that.
Okay.
I just quickly went through my emails. I'm not seeing it either.
Seen it either.
Okay.
I still think we have plenty of time though. I think we started early last year, so it's not a big deal. We're just letting you know we didn't see it.
Yeah.
I feel like
Okay.
we got a really quick start last year and then, yeah. I don't think it's a problem, even if we get it sometime in the next few weeks.
Okay. So if you don't have it, I'll go over it with you super quick.
Yeah, let's take a look at it. That's good.
So first things first, I missed the first deadline of December 3rd to send it out. I just frankly, we weren't far enough along in coming up with the budget to actual appearance that we wanted. So those did go out today. So that went out a little late in terms of the very first step, which was give out the budget worksheets. But I think getting them back in early January 9th-ish is still workable. My first budget book for the Board of Selectmen somewhere around January 23rd and giving the Board of Selectmen basically a month to do whatever, make whatever decisions they want to make, and then, and then hold hearings if they so choose. Every year they seem to want to do something slightly different. And then that gives you the budget worksheet around March 1st, once the Board of Selectmen is okay releasing it to you. So that meets our charter requirement because you have to have it at least 120 days before the end of the fiscal year. And that gives you till April 29th. Somewhere in that time frame to hold your public budget hearing. And the charter requires that not less than 60 days before the end of the fiscal year. You could do it as late as May 1, but that then would delay the townwide budget meeting. And that gives a townwide budget meeting number 1 around May 2nd or 3rd. And I prefer to do it as early as we can in May. We could do it the week after, but by doing it on the 2nd or the 3rd, that gives us the most chance, if we have a failure or even a couple failures, of still having a budget in place early enough to send out the tax bills on July 1 with the correct mill rate. So that's kind of what I'm proposing. And I will send that to you in hard copy. All right. Anybody have questions about that schedule wise? Okay.
Okay. Anything else from Eric or to Eric? Questions for Eric on the budget? Joanne?
I was only going to make a comment that it would be, I know that we have more finance people coming on board at the town, so it'll be, I think it'll kind of go hand in hand, because I think they talked about not advertising until soon after the holiday. So it makes sense, the schedule, because we really want to have the people involved this time and, the right people hired. That's not my job. I'm just hopeful for that to happen. That's all. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5 then, which is old business. 5A is the audit status. Eric?
I don't really have anything more other than what I've told you already.
Okay.
We did have Cheryl, myself, and the auditor, Mike, had about an hour-long conversation about a week ago, and sat down and just kind of figured out what scheduling was going to work. And Cheryl's pretty confident he can give him a completed audit packet, right around the middle of January. And Mike seemed, pretty happy with that. That timing worked well for him. In fact, a lot of years they don't start it before then anyway. So if we've caught up enough to be there, and because Cheryl has done, the vast majority of work, which our previous, finance staff hadn't really been able to do, we should have a fully audit ready package. That's certainly the goal. And so that's kind of where we're at.
Any questions for Eric on that? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item 5B. That's discuss and vote on the town purchasing policy. I think you all had a copy of that. I don't know that it's in the packet, but I think we had distributed it. Basically, we had gone through almost line by line on the questionable items of the last time, and we sent it back around. Does anybody have any questions about that or comments?
I didn't have any issues with it, and I'm happy to share that on my screen if you have specific things you want to talk about and review.
I feel like the one good thing that giving us the extra time, just the eyes to look it over for proofing, I think Robert and whoever, I think maybe Linda too, they already brought up some good comments. So and the good part is that we can revise it at any time, right? So
Right.
I feel comfortable after taking the extra month and taking a look at it, that nothing stood out to me. But I am happy that we can revise it at any time if it doesn't work for the purposes, right? That we would like it to. I'm good with it.
Other comments, questions? Would anybody like to make a motion to adopt the Town of Andover purchasing policy as identified in the draft adopted at the last, with the modifications adopted in the last meeting of November 16? Anyone?
I would like to make a motion to adopt the purchasing policy as presented to us and gone over at the last meeting of November 16th. I think you said presented as a draft policy. I hope that's everything.
Yep. I guess
I would
that-
like to make a motion to adopt it as presented and all that.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Rob. Seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. The policy is adopted. Eric, I have the file, so what I'll do is I just had at the top the date needed to be updated. I'll do that. I'll send that to you and Kate and the rest of the board, and we'll have it
Perfect.
signed. All right?
We'll put it on our policies and procedures. And thank you all for tackling that as a task. That's
Yeah, it was a big one.
needed to be done.
Yeah, and special thanks to Diane, who's not here, obviously. She did a lot of the groundwork on that, so good. Okay, very well. We'll move on to the next item, which is the current status of staff searches for the finance department. Eric, any update?
No, the Board of Selectmen had asked me to hold off and advertise basically January 1, so we do it right after the holidays. So I've agreed to do that. I don't see anything. The boards have seen the job description. So I don't see that as being an issue. The only thing I think we may end up having to negotiate a little bit with the union at some point, which hopefully will be sometime in February, is over the exact compensation for that position. But, my theory is since we've changed the job description, we know it has to be a union position, but we're basically just going to tell them, what we're going to be paying for the position, and figuring out how to make them deal with it.
Okay, questions for Eric on that? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move into new business. So obviously the first order of new business is to discuss our interested candidates for the open Board of Finance position and to select the new board member if we can. So we have two interested candidates, Ashley Helton and Bill DeRosiers. I hope I'm pronouncing your names correctly. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah. I want to, I guess, on behalf of the board, just thank you both very much for your interest and willingness to serve, regardless of where we end up on this. I mean, I personally think you both would be great candidates. It's very hard to get people to serve on these things. There's a big commitment, and it's an important position in the town. And so, as we all on the board know, and Eric knows very well, it can be a tough job, and there's obviously time involved, and so we appreciate your willingness to serve. So the way we're going to go ahead and go about this is you've already both submitted a brief personal statement, a little bit of background information. So I just kind of like to take you each in turn and have you an opportunity for you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your interests. Just, it doesn't have to be detailed, just fairly brief, but just, you can kind of talk about yourselves and what your level of interest is and kind of your background. And then as each of you does that, we'll just give the board members an opportunity to ask any questions they may have, and we'll just we'll kind of proceed that way. And you can ask questions as also if you like. What we'll do at that point, I think, is move into executive session. So what that means is that's a private session, kind of discuss certain matters. We have the opportunity to do that as a board. It will not be recorded, and members of the public won't participate or view that. And we'll just have some frank discussion about where we want to go with this, or if people have questions or comments. But the actual vote and nomination will take place in public session after we leave executive session. So that will be a matter of public record. And then we'll move on with the rest of our meeting. So assuming that a candidate is chosen, essentially you're effectively a member of the Board of Finance at that point. So you become a voting member and are able to vote if you so choose on the remaining agenda items and going forward. Okay.
Mark,
Yeah, Eric?
one thing.
Yep.
Technically, they're not a board member until they're sworn in. So whoever gets chosen has to go to the town clerk's office and get sworn in officially before they can participate with the board.
You are correct. Thanks, Eric. I had forgotten that because I don't think that was a procedure that was followed when I joined the board. Yeah, they voted me in and made me chairman within a space of about 10 minutes. And I learned a lot over that period of time. So, okay. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you, Eric. That's correct. So you're certainly more than welcome to participate, but you wouldn't actually be a voting member, I think, at that point. So.
Right. And just for the record, what we'll do is we'll put everybody that is not invited into the executive session, and that will be the chairman's decision who is and is not invited. Everybody else will go back into the waiting room. And then as soon as the executive session is over, you'll be readmitted from the waiting room. And then the meeting officially will resume.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, and hopefully it won't be too long. We'll try not to keep anybody waiting. And I see Jay's joined us now, and he's going to have to wait for all this to end. So we'll try to use your time wisely. Okay, so that being said, Ashley, I see you're first on the list. So if you want to take a moment, kind of tell us about yourself and you're interested in the Board of Finance position.
Sure, absolutely. So thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the time that you all obviously put kind of into the town and into the board. So let's see, I moved to Connecticut in 2013. Lots of folks up here catch my accent pretty quickly. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Kentucky, lived in Georgia, North Carolina. And so my running joke when I introduce myself to people is that I bought my first snow shovel in 2013. So we moved here in 2013. We rented for a couple of years in Coventry as we were deciding which town to move to, and moved here to Andover in 2015. Andover was kind of just the kind of town we were looking for, kind of very small town feel, like where we grew up in Kentucky. My husband and I grew up in the same hometown. Our parents lived 5 miles from each other, but also close to the university, close, easy to drive to places. So we really liked Andover for that reason, and we really liked the school. So moved here very quickly, had our 2 kids who are now 6 and 3. So I have young kids and a bit of a bananas household. But having my kids, I took some time off from kind of giving back to the community, I guess you would say. So I have not served in an elected capacity for any of the towns that I've lived in, but volunteer work has always been kind of part of what I do. Part of what I do in my personal life and my professional life as a university professor. I do a lot of outreach and engagement that way. And so I'll talk about my professional work in just a second, but that's kind of the impetus for me applying to this, kind of thinking very carefully about ways that I want to give back to the community, and seeing this opening and thinking that it's kind of something different than normal service, than my previous service, but something that I think is kind of very complementary to my professional experience. Professionally, I'm a trained scientist. I have a PhD in ecology, and my specialty is biogeochemistry, which I always joke just means that I didn't know what kind of scientist I wanted to be, so squished all the words together, and it was a little bit of everything. But really, what I do is mostly study kind of water quality management, streams and rivers, water flow in streams and rivers. I study coastal wetlands, that kind of thing. So I started as an assistant professor at UConn. I was tenured in 2019. And then this past year, I became the director of our Institute of the Environment at UConn. So I'm in a 50% administrative position. So I administer, I teach, and I do research. I run a fairly large research program that employs graduate students, postdoctoral associates, undergraduates, and research technicians. And so as part of building that research lab, that was really my first deep dive into what it meant to think very strategically when it comes to finances, how you juggle a lot of accounts, how you juggle a lot of employees and moving parts. And I'm sorry, I have a visitor. This is Dottie. And so I really kind of enjoyed that about my experience as an assistant professor, kind of being thrown into the world of really having to think about a lot of complicated budgets and how they fit together. And so now I've moved into an administrative position. And so as I co-administrate the Institute of the Environment with the executive director. And so we administer 4 academic units that each have separate budgets, and then we have our own budget. We supervise a business office of 2 full-time staff, 2 part-time staff. And so we deal with kind of many different types of budgets and finances, and a couple of different unions, and full-time permanent staff down to kind of part-time undergraduate technicians. And I've just kind of really enjoyed learning how to administer kind of what for me is a fairly kind of complex system, complex unit. And so when I saw this opening, I thought that I would be really interested in learning how the town finances work, and in potentially volunteering my time and hopefully transferring some of my knowledge and skills into this board and this position.
Okay, thank you very much. I should say Dr. Helton, I guess. So.
No, I'm Ashley. My father-in-law was Dr. Helton. I'm Ashley.
Got it. Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for the presentation. It's good to meet you virtually. Normally, we would probably do this kind of thing in person, obviously, but so many of the town's meetings have gravitated towards the virtual meetings, which probably works well for everybody given busy schedules, et cetera. So does anybody have any questions or anything for Ashley, things they want to ask about or comment on?
I actually have a couple questions to ask each of them when they're done.
Oh, go ahead, Louise. Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
We'll do one.
What was that?
We'll just do each in turn, I think.
Okay. Ashley, I was just wondering what you expect from the board. What expectations, what do you think that we do on a meeting, during our meetings?
That's a great question, right? So I've had a chance to kind of read some of the meeting notes. I didn't have a chance to watch any of the recordings, but I've tried to go back and read a little bit. So you'll test my knowledge and you'll see how conceptually right or wrong I kind of got it. So I think kind of, coming into this, my only experience with the Board of Finance was during Board of Education meetings. I think those were my first kind of in-person town meetings. And so I think I was a little intimidated when I saw the opening, because I thought, oh my goodness, right? Is this kind of a contentious board to serve on? And then as I read the meeting notes, I realized that, maybe it was a little bit broader and steadier than that, outside of the budget season. And so I assume that that you all, you spend obviously all year talking about the budgets from the different units in the town. Units is probably the wrong word. I'm so used to university speak. The different boards, the different units in the town. Am I getting
Yeah.
Yeah. So going through those budgets individually, asking those different boards, those different units questions about their budgets, trying to understand the budgets. I obviously just heard you vote on policy. I'm assuming that you have the authority to revise particular policies for the town that have to do with fiscal issues. Yeah, I see from kind of the meeting schedules that they're less dense outside of budget season and perhaps a little bit more intense and a little bit more often during budget seasons. I think that's about all I have. I also don't want to come in and presume like I kind of know what you do. I'm fully expecting this to be a bit of a learning opportunity for me. I want to learn. I obviously have not served on a board of finance for a town, so it would be new for me. But I enjoy thinking about budgets and systems and parts and how people and things work together. So I would hope that, that kind of that skill set and that interest would transfer over.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I have another one.
Sure.
And I actually want to ask both of them. How much time do you think you'll be able to contribute to the board? Do you feel there'll be an issue, or will you be able to?
Yeah. So, I mean,
most meetings.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And that's something that was probably my biggest hesitation in applying. I mean, just to be honest, I took after I found it was open, I think I applied on like the last day. And that's because I was kind of thinking through, like, is this a time commitment that I think I can make? I obviously have a full-blown career right now and a couple of kids, young kids too, right? Their time sucks. So I think, the monthly meetings are definitely doable. I assume that there's some preparation for the monthly meetings, depending on the month, likely several hours to a little bit more, maybe even more the first year, while the person coming into this position is trying to learn and understand how the budgets work. So I assume that there's a few hours of prep before each meeting. That's kind of a once a month thing or so outside of budget season, and then likely quite a bit more during budget season. I don't know if I fully understand how much that is because I haven't done it. But I think that's the best I can answer that question.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
Go in.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment too. I like that Louise touched on that, but you have a really broad overview and really an open mind, and you can tell just from your being all the roles you've had, being an administrator and knowing. So, I mean, it already like talking it through. You're right to think about the time and worry about it, just having been in those positions when you do have a career and all that. And this isn't to dissuade you or not. I'm very impressed that we have, like Mark said, candidates that are willing. Same thing, like I had a busy career and raised my family and everything, always kept an eye on the, having been in town for a while, but then jumping in when I had time. But it's people like you and Bill too. I mean, so we're gonna hear from both that are used to busy careers and getting things done. We just all somehow manage, that's just a broad overview. I love that Louise brought it up, but you do. I mean, it's just the type of person you are, and just hearing and having read about both of you, I don't want to say anything here. It's just funny. You just kind of manage what you have to do. But it does take a lot of time, like you said. And I feel like reading the written word of the minutes, I was going to say, our minutes really are very vague to me. So it doesn't give the full picture. But I think our board really gets along well. I did a lot of, to say to both of you, I felt like I've been involved, I've listened from afar, and then I made sure that I was at meetings and learned all about the town, which both of you are very involved. Yeah, because I felt like if I was going to put myself out there and learn about it and talk about it, I did exactly what you said. I'm going to sit back and learn the first year on the board. And then now I feel like, even though I knew, I feel like I can speak up more because I've watched the process. I've listened to what was supposed to happen. So I'm just very direct, but yeah, I'm impressed with the things that you have said, both of you, both candidates, and wanting to get involved is really the number one thing that is helpful to the town.
All right, thanks. Quick question for me, Ashley. So you help administer the expenses against this budget. Was this a budget you helped develop, or is this part of the grant process, or the mix to that?
So I've been involved from a few different perspectives. So in running my own research lab, those grants are grants that I wrote and developed the budget kind of purely on my own, or sometimes with collaborators. So I've led a little over $2 million that I've developed purely on my own, about $8 million that I've co-led with collaborators, so co-developed with other, scientists like myself. And so then, administered or co-administered about $10 million in research funding, mostly from the National Science Foundation, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the Long Island Sound Study, which is a regional arm of the Environmental Protection Agency. So those grants funded both students and staff, so funded personnel, but then also funded lab work, field work, stuff that kind of we do in my field. I didn't mention this, but as part of my research program, I manage an analytical lab, which kind of has its own set of budgets. So then I said a few perspectives. So then the second perspective is I manage about $1 million worth of instrumentation in my lab. And so there are budgets associated with those instruments to help maintain and repair them, and students and faculty from our campus or other campuses use those instruments. And so there's, billing those folks and kind of managing that internal lab budget. And then from the third perspective is the Institute of the Environment budget. So the Institute of the Environment budget is not a budget that I write, but that's a budget that we go to budget hearings and argue for, and then is handed down from the provost at the university to the Institute of the Environment. So our institute reports to the provost, who's kind of the head of the academic side of campus. The provost reports to the president. And so those are budget hearings, and we argue for our budget, and then we're granted a budget, and then we spend the year trying to manage that budget and not go into the red.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ashley? Okay, thank you very much. I guess, Bill, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in the Board of Finance position and your background?
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me tonight. So I have lived in town for 35 years. I built the house that I live in here back in 1985. I grew up in Coventry, so the apple didn't fall far from the tree, I guess. I raised my family here. My kids are much older than Ashley's. My son is 34, expecting our first grandchild with him. My daughter is 29. She lives in Boston. So they grew up in Andover. They went through the school system here. I think Andover, as I said in my letter, was just a great place to grow up for a lot of reasons. I mean, our kids grew up outside. They grew up running and playing in the Nathan Hale State Forest and riding their bikes, and went to a great school system. I think that's one of the strongest points that we have in this town is an excellent school system. One of the areas of interest that I have is to continue to support that school system. I know there's been a lot of controversy, the Board of Education over the last couple of years. I think my key focus there is having a good budget that supports good education for our children, but doesn't necessarily give the Board of Education, the free bank account that they were looking for not too long ago. It seemed like they just thought they could have anything carte blanche. So reasonable budgets, reasonable spending, but still providing the best education as possible. My career, I've worked for the same company for 35 years now. It's called Legrand. We're an electrical manufacturer in West Hartford, Connecticut. I've held many, many jobs over that time, from sales management, moved into a production role as part of my training to move on to other roles, product management, account management for large national accounts. And for the last 15 years, I've been the director of training for the company. In all of those roles, I've had to create budgets, push them past the executive staff get approval for those budgets. Not nearly the size of the budgets that Ashley has worked with. My budgets have usually been in the $200,000-300,000 range, not the millions. So, but I did have to create those budgets, and I did have to live within those budgets. Obviously, push for their adoption as well. So, my main interest really is that now that my children are grown up and moved on, I have only a year or two left in my career. I'll be retiring soon. I want to give back. I've been serving as the chairman of the ZBA for the last 3.5 years. I've been a volunteer for the beautification committee with my wife and the museum committee as well. I've been on that board as well. So many other things within town too. So I am a volunteer. I do give my time back. I think it's important. And I just think this is a much bigger role than I've taken before as far as giving back to the community. But I think it's one that my career and now the time that I have lends itself well to. So I like to see the town continue to slowly grow. I like to see the Route 6 corridor become a little more commercialized, to add to our commercial base, and help our tax base out, help us to grow a little bit. But I do like the rural nature of our town. I like its proximity to not only the outdoors, but, again, being able to quickly be in Manchester or Hartford or Willimantic, wherever, we need to go to shop or out for entertainment. So I just think it's a great location. It's a great town. And I think I'm ready to give the talents that I've picked up over the years, 35 years in the industry that I've worked in, to the town. So that's about it.
Okay.
We'll see questions.
Appreciate it. Okay, questions for Bill? Louise, do you want to pose your 2 questions?
Yeah, same question. What are your expectations from the board?
Yeah, so I do have some understanding of the board, not much more than Ashley has, but my wife served on the Board of Finance, Kathy DeRosiers, for many years. She was a board of select person, so I kind of heard this stuff in the background, a lot of conversations in this household from her many years of serving in this town. So, my understanding is you gather all of the different boards and commissions budgets, you review them, you put together a budget that we bring to the town to vote on, and again, probably have some authority to approve things like you talked about earlier, as far as the purchasing rules or procedures, that sort of thing. So I have a lot to learn as well about the board and everything that you do. But again, there have been a couple times that I've been asked to either run for the board or to fill in this position. And I thought, yeah, that's something I'd be interested in doing. Obviously, I would have a lot to learn coming into this role too.
Okay. And do you feel you have the time to contribute to it?
I do. I will say that I've been the chairman of the ZBA almost immediately, just like you, Mark. I was elected to the ZBA, and almost immediately half the board left, and I was immediately elected chairman. I've never missed a meeting in those 3.5 years. I'm not saying I would never miss a meeting. I do have vacation planned for this spring, but I do take it seriously and put every effort into making it to every meeting. And I do realize that at budget time, it gets a little busier than the once a month. Like right now, you probably have a once a month meeting, but I'm sure when it gets to budget time, that cadence picks up a bit. So I'm obviously prepared to do that as well.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And Mark takes it way over the limit. He does Zoom meetings from Europe in the middle of the night.
Hopefully not anymore.
That's dedication.
That was way too late for me, so.
All right, thank you both.
Okay,
Any other questions? I know you had a couple questions before. I wasn't sure if there's any more questions or.
Joanne, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, I think she asked the 2. The time element was 1, and then
Oh, that's right.
contributing.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to bring up, are we allowed to make comments just out there? Like not,
Sure, yeah.
yeah, nothing, I mean, it's just to put it out there in our meeting for the minutes that Bill did take an interest and did run, right, Bill, in the last election.
And you beat me. You
I
beat me.
know, I know. I have
Oh,
to
that's
say,
right.
just for my family, like, because people told me I was the unknown name. So I really
Yeah.
take pride. I do kind of preach. I walk the walk and, if I'm going to talk the talk, I walk the walk. I really do
Yeah.
believe in being present in the meetings, getting your face out there and really, coming to the meeting. So sorry, Bill. I mean,
Spike that football. Spike that football.
So I do take a lot of time, I've got to say. But we had fun. We had fun with handing out our pamphlets and
We
talking.
did.
So I just think it's fair to say that he did run, so he's got a little bit of a history of
We're
running.
still friends. We're still neighbors.
Absolutely. Look at that. I know you still talk to me. We wave, but that wasn't the point. I just think it's important to know that this isn't your first interest. I mean, I think it's important to just say that out loud, give you a little bit of credit that you've been interested in this. You did put in the time before. Not that Ashley sounds like she came steady. I'm just publicly saying that. That's all. And you were. It was very not that, but no, it was very close. But anyways, that's it.
All right, thanks.
I just have just the only comment I would make before I think we might want to go to executive session and sort this out is that we are in what seems like an unusual situation for us in that we seem to have an embarrassment of riches here. We have two very good candidates, and I don't quite know what to do with that. In the past, it's been it hasn't been like this. So when we've had to fill vacancies, so this is pretty great, and let's get to it.
Okay. Other questions for the, go ahead, Ashley. Do you have something you want to add?
Sorry, I was trying to wait until the end. So I guess I have a question and a comment, if that's
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'm a professor, so of course I have a comment, right? So Joanne, Joanne, I heard you say that the committee gets along, or you said something that made me internalize that this committee got along. And I guess I would be curious in asking the committee about how you all think the internal function of the committee is, because I'm really interested in serving on a committee that wants to kind of get stuff done and isn't worried about kind of infighting or political divisions and just wants to do the best for the town. And so I would be really, and maybe you all can't talk about this in front of each other. Maybe it's not a fair question. You're not going to tell me there's infighting, but I do want to ask that.
Yeah, I guess I'll start and I'll just say that, my perception is that this is a pretty functional group. We don't always agree on policy, but generally in terms of procedurally and the way we proceed and the way we work together, I think that it works pretty well. I don't personally feel a lot of there's infighting or politicking or grudges or things like that. So we work pretty effectively and there's respect. And so I think that, our meetings tend to run pretty smoothly for that purpose. And generally we work pretty well. What you won't find in this group, at least it's not really, you won't find a lot of negotiating behind the scenes. Obviously discussions happen, not with the whole board, because then that becomes a freedom of information issue. And we don't meet and discuss as a whole board, but we might, there might be casual conversations and things that happen. And I know that in other situations with other boards and other personalities, sometimes that happens. There's a lot of politicking that goes on around behind the scenes. I'm not in favor of that personally, because I don't think that's what the purpose of the public elected official is. And I think that this group doesn't really operate that way. So that would be my, I think it's actually a fairly well-functioning group of folks. So, Rob, sorry.
Let Joanne go. She was waiting. She was going first.
Only because my comment brought her question, so thank you. I kind of wanted to counterpoint. The good part is I think the word is respect. And I'm not saying it's not in other places, but I'm very direct. So I don't mind. And it sounds like we like to get things done too. And I think that's why when Eric brought up the schedule, I felt like a lot of it, I'm ready to get it done too, because your time is precious. We're there for a mission. I'm preparing, just like in my job ahead of time. I come with a million things. And then, sometimes it's get it all ready and we can't move it along too. So even though I say we get along, we all have our own viewpoints. I think probably we know where some of us stand on certain things, but yeah, I'm definitely someone that works on budgets in my job too. And I'm definitely someone that believes in saving money and doing the best for the town too, because, taxes go up and up and up. That affects your property, your whole life and everything. But you have to find the balance. So we're all very direct. We're not afraid to say things, I think, we just try to say it respectfully or whatever. But I just meant getting along, whatever your perception was of, the contentious. I just meant, I think there's a lot of respect here. And our person that you would be filling the role for, one of you will fill, was a high level person too, that did a lot of work, contributed a lot to the board, and didn't pull any punches. I learned a lot from her, and I love it. I love academia where you are. I work in a school system, so I love to expand the knowledge at all. We all do. So learning is good. So that's it with that. Thank you. Thanks, Mark and Rob.
Rob?
Yeah, no problem. I don't want to make this meeting 3 hours, so I'll just be really brief. I'm just going to echo the comments. We have a very kind of collegial working relationship. I think part of it is that the town budget, because we're such a small town, there isn't a lot of super contentious stuff in our budget. The last few budget cycles, there's been some fighting at the town level over the ed budget. But for the most part, there's not a heck of a lot going on beyond, should we buy this truck or not? Should we buy, put it off 2 years? We got to repair this. That kind of nuts and bolts stuff is, the vast majority of what we do. And, when I joined this board a while back now, God, I don't even want to think about what year it was now. When I got brought in, one of the things the existing board at the time, many of whom actually went on to be on the Board of Selectmen, said was, look, we all kind of have a standing agreement. We all check our national politics at the door. We come in, we do the business of the town. Because if we don't, then this could devolve into nonsense. And like, what does that do? What is the use of that? And the answer is really, there is no use in doing that. It's just a waste of everybody's time and it doesn't help the town. So I think we've all done a real good job over the years of staying on that mission.
Awesome. Good to hear.
I just wanted to add that we're very coherent and we're very professional. And I think, Ashley, you probably see that at your level as well in the college. So, my point.
Anything else? Questions, comments? Eric?
So I just wanted to say two things. Both of you probably figured out by now, I am the town administrator. Number one, I appreciate you both serving. I served on boards and commissions for quite a while before I became the administrator. So I recognize the time commitment that it takes to be an effective board member. So I appreciate anybody willing to serve. The second thing is my door is always open. I think at this point, there's nobody on the Board of Finance who hasn't called me at a random time and had a long conversation about some issue. So I'm happy to talk to you, to whomever is selected, and I don't have a vote as a professional staff. I'm not on the Board of Finance, but I'm happy to talk to you about, where the authority of the board stems from in terms of the charter, what your authority is and your responsibilities are as a board, and answer any questions either of you would have about the budget or budget process. So that's all I wanted to say. And thank you both for being willing to serve.
Thanks so much, Eric. And then comment was just to say hi to Bill. It's good to see you. I didn't know you were also interested until I saw your name on the agenda. I'm also a Bear Swamp person, so yeah.
I didn't know that, actually. We're in Bear Swamp.
We're right on the corner of Bear and Wheeling in the Little Blue Ranch House.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Really?
Go right by it every day.
So Bill, I don't know if you remember, but relatively soon after we moved in here, you and Kathy had dinner with me and my husband at Joan and Jim's house.
At Joan and, yes, that's right too.
Yeah,
That's right too. I didn't recognize you, but now I remember that.
Yeah.
It was a few years ago.
It is a small town.
And
You know,
for the
look at
record,
Meet you again.
Pomp Road and probably missing out. I should have bought that one. So
Oh,
right.
I had seen that you were both, I know Bill, of course, from years back. But I had seen on your resume, Ashley, I'm like, another neighbor, so thank you for, I thought that would be kind of awkward and not appropriate for me to ask where, but I do know where you live now, so I'm down farther, so.
Okay, it's a small town thing, right?
yeah, definitely is that.
Your
I'm
street
gonna have to
address
start
really
recruiting on
means-
Gilead. Like, what is going on over here?
Right.
Represented.
Anyways, I don't want to make the meeting longer. I'm not a fan of the name of our road, but whatever, it is what it is.
Okay.
All right.
And
Other questions or comments for our guests?
And
Candy?
Ashley, if you want to know just how small a town it is, I was born in the house that you live in now. And that house was built by my grandfather many years
Please
ago.
tell me you know what used to be painted in the basement.
At one point, there was a giant, there was an enormous map that spread throughout one whole back in that like lounge area in the back
Yeah,
of the basement.
was that a map? It's just painted white, and my husband and I have all these theories about like what's under the white. And is there some way we can like wipe the white paint off to figure out what it was? So it's a map?
Yeah, that was a map of the world, but yeah. Yep.
That's really funny.
That's astounding.
It is. Yeah.
Archaeology.
Yeah. Right.
Almost, you're gonna go in there with the brush and like wipe the paint off to see the
So
map.
Eric,
underneath.
are those your handprints on the street? Little kid handprints?
No, actually, believe it or not, I'm pretty sure those were Bob Burbank's kids. Bob Burbank was the longtime first selectman of the town who bought that from my father.
But Bob lived in the house on the corner too, when we first moved up here, the ranch.
Yep.
So we're the ranch on the corner of Wheeling and Bear Swamp.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm making the meeting longer, I realize, but I had really to ask about that mural.
This is kind of crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's amusing. Okay, I will try to bring it back to the agenda of the meeting, though. Other questions for the candidates or relevant comments? Notice the word relevant. I didn't. Yeah, it was fun. Okay, would somebody like to move that we exit into? We have a motion to move into executive session.
I will
I'll
make
make-
that motion. Let's move into executive session and discuss our candidates.
Okay, Rob? Thank you. Anybody want to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Louise. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, once again, thank you to the candidates. The board will now move into an executive session. Eric, let us know when you're ready and we'll go from there.
Okay, so the first thing you have to do as the chairman now is say
Oh.
who you want in executive session.
So we would want the Board of Finance members, and Eric, I think if you would participate also so we can manage the meeting.
Okay, if you would like that, I will do that. Let me throw everybody in the waiting room. Hopefully I can figure out how to do that. Yeah. Be right back.
Looking good.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have everybody there? Okay, and let me just wait. I'm going to stop the recording. Actually, I'm going to pause. Okay, so the recording has started. You are out of executive session.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Again, thank you to Ashley and Bill. It's certainly a tough decision, I think, for the Board of Finance, but we're going to go ahead and take a vote right now. And what we'll do is we'll just call out the name. So all those in favor of appointing Ashley to the Board of Finance position, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those in favor of appointing Bill to the Board of Finance position, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it looks like, Bill, you're our candidate. We appreciate it. Actually, this is really, really a tough decision. I mean, we love
It's
your
okay.
background.
I am an academic, so rejection is the name of my game. You know, like you always really want something and then you're happy when you get it. And then sometimes when you don't get it, you're like, oh, okay, that also feels okay.
Bill may be calling you during budget season going, this should have gone the other way. So,
No,
but I
Bill's a wonderful person, and I'm glad that you guys had a choice. I run a lot of searches, and I know how awesome it is when you get to the last two candidates and you're like, yes, we have two people we can choose from. So
Right.
I very much appreciate being part of it. Like I said, I'll keep my eye out and find
absolutely.
go
Yeah.
for in the town.
We were already discussing some other options for your future.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say, I am newish to the town and don't know the full history. So you all have my email now. So if there are openings or positions you think it would benefit me to take a look at, feel free to reach out.
Probably
Absolutely.
need to get some emails.
Did a great job, Ashley. It was really impressive. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was very nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you very much again. Yeah.
And
Actually, we gotta get together again, neighbor, so.
Yeah, I know. So, and like I said, I was surprised to see Bill here. And I mean, obviously, Bill's a great candidate, has run for the position before. I remember seeing his name when I voted. So it's all great.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much again,
Thanks so
both of
much.
you. So yeah, Bill will work with you to get you sworn in, and then I'll separately send you a list of the meeting dates, et cetera, just so you have that and try to catch you up to date on everything we've had. So
Yeah, my.
it's all public
information.
record, but just to make it quick.
You have my contact information, Mark?
Jay, you're going to be on in about 2 minutes.
Yeah,
You do, okay.
I
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I
And
do.
should I
I'll
just go
also
in-
set you up with a town email address, so Eric will handle that separately. So.
And should I just
Yeah.
go in any day this week to see the town clerk, Eric, or
Yeah,
as far as
because
swearing in?
right, because Carol is out right now, her
Oh.
assistant doesn't run full hours, so just give a quick call first and then just go in and get sworn in, and then you will be official.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you,
right.
sir.
Thanks again to you both. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the purchase of the Public Works plow truck. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. Thank you, Jay, for being patient. We'll go ahead and Eric, you want to cover the overview here, or you want to hand it over to Jay?
I think I'm going to basically, all right, I will do a quick overview. As most of you know, we talked extensively last year about the purchase of a plow truck because at the time it was looking like we had to plan a couple of years out. Things have gotten a little better now. As many of you might remember, we surprisingly enough got a build slot last summer, which we were not anticipating, nor did we really want to buy the truck last year. So, because we always intended for our capital plan for Public Works to be on a 5-year purchase schedule for trucks for Public Works, because that gives us one that's basically 0, 5, and 10 years old. And then by the time we purchase the next one, we would have had one that's 5, 10, and 15 years old, 15 being a reasonable life expectancy for a plow truck that's well maintained. So in the next winter was the time we anticipated having the plow truck. That gets us on the 5-year rolling schedule. So it's taken us a long time to get to the point where we're in that range where we have 3 vehicles that are the right age, and then the 4th being the emergency spare. So The long and the short of it is we need to make a decision fairly quickly because, you know, the last time we bought one, it took about 9 months to get it. And we had to go to public meeting to allot the money to do it. Now it's probably that same length of time or a little longer. So we're about 10 months out from when we would want to have that thing in the door and in the shop. Because even after we get it, it usually takes a month to fully commission because we put our own radios in it and do a lot of the stuff ourselves to save money. So if we're going to do it, we need to pull the trigger and get a build slot fairly quickly. Last year, we presented 3 options to CIP and then Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. And then Jay had indicated their preference would be to go to Freightliner. The last couple we bought were Peterbilts. The Peterbilt has gotten considerably more expensive. And because of that, you know, even though Peterbilt makes a really good vehicle, Freightliner makes a pretty damn good vehicle also. It didn't seem worthwhile to spend the extra money. Our intention is still to buy one with a stainless steel / Hardox body, which those are a little bit more expensive, but the cost of rebodying a truck is somewhere around $40,000 just for the body. And then there's a bunch of labor to install it. So if we can get to the point where we get bodies that last the whole life of the truck, as instead of having to replace it, overall, it's much cheaper, you know, to buy it, you know, to spend the money up front than it is to buy the mild steel bodied unit and then get stuck with replacing it because they are expensive. Up to the current 2 generations of trucks, we have pretty much always ended up rebodying our trucks. You know, so we're trying to get away from that. So the question becomes, does this purchase conform to our purchase policy? And then is the Board of Selectmen on board with leasing that? You know, it's still going to go to CIP and it's still going to go back to Board of Selectmen before the trigger is pulled. But it's just basically to keep you in the loop and get a decision from the Board of Selectmen whether you'd consider financing. One of the things that I didn't even realize till earlier today, which Jay had brought up, is that if we're going to finance this thing, we basically have to escrow the first, you know, finance payment when we sign the contract, because that's what they're doing with build slots right now, because, you know, there's so much pressure on the builders, you know, and there's so much competition for actually getting vehicles. I know, you know, we've heard a lot of horror stories lately about people who thought they had build slots and then the build slot got canceled and they ended up with nothing, which is exactly what happened with us with our senior transportation. We were supposed to have the thing last May, and we're hoping we're going to get it this May. And the state's already basically paid the money for it. We just don't physically have it because they haven't been able to deliver it. So that's all I wanted to say. Now I'm turning it over to Jay.
Well, thank you for that. It makes my job a lot easier. Yeah, just to elaborate on that, I again reached out back to Freightliner for an updated quotation. And the purchase price, body, plow, all outfitted, with the exception of the minor things that we put in, $258,608.86. And I was asked to, and I apologize that I wasn't able to get it to you in time, but I was asked to ask them about the lease purchase program for a 4-year and a 5-year payments. The 4-year payments are $71,772.46, and the 5-year is $58,888.95. And this specific quote is locked in, or it's good till January 5th. after January 5th, they would, look at the, look at it again. And if there's any changes with financing rates, it would have to be updated. And as Eric said, if approved or when approved, and we go with the lease option, the first payment would be due at the signing of the contract and held in escrow until delivery. Currently, the salesman that we're dealing with, he has 12 build slots available between now and whenever they get filled up. So the sooner we get in, we're looking, receiving the truck the beginning of winter, late fall, early winter, depending on when we sign the contract and, they put Andover in the mix.
Okay. Questions for Eric or Jay on this?
I just wanted to understand, I know you quoted, so you gave us the total, Jay, of the lease payments, what they would be. So
Yep.
we're saying, clearly, I know how to do math, so the total is 258. So what exact amount would be due?
Well, the
Like-
258,608 would be if you purchase it outright.
Right. So I think you said the 5-year lease payment is 58,888.95.
Correct.
So that's for one of the 5, obviously, right? I'm just like, what would be due at the signing? What percentage of a lease payment?
The first payment, the 58,888.95.
I'm used to regular leases where you pay monthly, so this is a yearly chunk.
Yeah,
So
it's
just
a,
one
yeah,
payment. See, I'm a novice. I like that. There I go. I'm learning more. Okay, so that's why it was such a huge amount. So we just pay one payment per month. That's what the lease is?
per year for 5 years.
Again, tired, long day.
Yep.
Okay. I was looking for like a smaller thing, like a car lease or, okay. So we would have to, that's an additional big chunk of change that would have to happen this year that wasn't budgeted for. I mean, I get the whole benefit. I understand the process, but say you sign and I listened to the Board of Selectmen the other night, so it sounds like it's pushed off to January. So maybe if you sign it in January or whatever you said it's good till, you've got to come up with that kind of money, right?
Yeah, so,
5th, right? Did you say the 5th? January 5th, that it was good till, the quote?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
good till
you always
January
start
5th.
early.
Yeah, so that's early January. I just want to make that point.
Right.
Yeah,
So they would have to, revisit the quote and re-quote us if there's any changes with finance. And, from what the salesman told me, typically if it's within the first couple of months, there's not much of a change. It's if you go 5-6 months out, then usually there's a, significant change in whatever the lease payments are. I mean, it's not horrendous, but there'll be a change.
Do we have an effective interest rate of what that lease cost represents?
I don't. I can get that. It's not on
You
what.
probably calculate it, so
Yeah.
Right.
just to take a few minutes for me to figure out the reverse Excel function on that.
Yeah,
Anyway, I
so
just wondered-
Eric,
Yeah, understood.
Eric and I were discussing this as far as where the, money may come from. And part of it, I don't know if we can do all of it, but our existing capital equipment budget, we just got the skid steer in. That was approved a year ago. So we've got that. We've got all the attachments with the exception of the auger. So I'm waiting on a final invoice. I got the bulk of it, which is right around $50,000. So we got to figure out exactly how much is going to be left from that capital equipment budget and see if there's, some at least partial funds for that 58,000 and change.
Joanne?
Right.
Thank you. And just to follow up, because Bill's listening too, remind me, and not a big long thing, because I do remember parts of it. So we have how many trucks that and Eric just kind of gave the little history lesson. How many plow trucks do we need full, great shape, operational? And I'll remember.
We have 3 plow routes, 3 frontline units.
Yep.
Currently, the 1995, not 95, 2005 International, the 2014 Peterbilt, and the 2020 Peterbilt. Those are our current 3 frontline units. And then our backup truck is the 1998 Ford Louisville.
Right. Okay.
So both the Ford Louisville and the International, we've had to put some money into this year to make some repairs to keep them going. And that leads into a whole nother discussion, but one of those trucks will have to, will remain the backup truck to the new truck. So basically, you're putting one out to pasture and only have to use it hopefully once in a while, and it'll stay in pretty good shape until such time that you bring on a new truck and the truck you're replacing becomes the backup truck. So we have 4 trucks, full-size plow trucks, and the 550 and my pickup.
And if we purchase this one, obviously when it comes on, it'll be one of the new good ones. And then, like you said, we'll still have a backup and then put one out to pasture. And you talked about it before. Were we selling that? Will we sell it for parts? Or, is there things like that?
No, we would sell it. We did put it to auction, which we've done with other surplus equipment. I don't know if you recall, 2 years ago now, right? We got rid of several pieces of equipment, the old sweeper and other such things, and the old 550 that we had to replace, the one that the motor went on it.
Thank you. I just figured, I know we're not making a decision or anything tonight, but I will remember this. I made notes and I just couldn't remember if we had 3 operational or 4. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, definitely the vehicle that goes to surplus, we try to recoup as much of the funds and, get some of that back. So it'll be something.
Right.
Other questions for Jay or Eric on that?
Yeah, and the only thing I wanted to say is that, when we decided in around 2018, actually, when I was on CIP, one of the tasks I took on was kind of public works and understanding, the life cycle of all the equipment. And one of the things we quickly realized is that we were spending more by holding the vehicles longer than we would have by replacing them regularly. If you look at the 2004 International, if you looked at what we put into that thing, we're well over $100,000 in repairs in that vehicle so far. And now we're into the range where we're likely to have really big ticket items go, like engines, transmissions, things of that nature. So the reality is, when you first buy a truck, you have very little in maintenance expenses. You have just ongoing routine maintenance. And then the older the thing gets, the more likely you are to have to deal with major repairs. So, we're not choosing this arbitrarily. We're choosing these time increments for reliability of our primary vehicle and the lowest overall cost. In the past, as a town, we've tended to buy the cheapest plow trucks that were available. We did that frankly with the International that we bought. And we've spent an enormous amount of money on the back end because it has not proven to be a reliable. So after that, in both 2014 and 2019, we selected Peterbilt's as the most, because they had a reputation for having the least repair cycle costs. Now the Freightliners appear to be, in that same range, and not significantly different in life cycle costs than the Peterbilt's. They're a little less expensive to begin with, but they don't seem to be more expensive to maintain. So that's what we're shooting for. I mean, our goal really is the lowest overall life cycle cost with the highest fraction of time, operating and running. And that's it.
I totally get it, I guess, and I understand what you're trying to do. I'm not trying to take over the questions, but I guess it just depends where we are in the town with the rest of the things, and right. I get it, Eric, in a perfect world, we want to do this, and I support like having the proactive type things, and I hope it all works out. I just don't know what else is going to happen in the town. Some of the grants that we just got approved are going to now, like you mentioned the other night, it's great that we got the grant, but now we've got to come up with 70,000 as a town. And I don't want to make this meeting longer, but that's all. That's where my mind comes. It's just all the extras. So I hope at the time that this happens, I understand the forward thinking and I get it. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, you have a C break by Jacobs on there. I probably helped write the manual for that 20 years ago. It was a common plan helping them install the first one, so long in a previous life. Just one thing, Linda, I'll jump right in there, but just one thing, we were talking about this this quotation. At the end of the quotation, it says it's valid until January 2nd.
Yeah, that was on the truck. The municipal lease
Okay.
is the to January 5th.
Okay. Go ahead,
So
Linda.
Okay, I was just wondering, you said we had a choice between a 4-year lease and a 5-year lease. Well, how many years between when we want to turn trucks over for the Public Works Department? Because I wouldn't want to be on a 5-year lease and we're trying to turn them over every 4 years, because then we're really going to be hurting for money. So I was just wondering what the plans were, how many years between.
No, the goal is to buy one plow truck every 5th year.
Okay.
Yep.
And is this a buyout option at the end of the lease?
You own it. You own
right.
it at the end of the
It's
lease.
basically end of the lease, you pay them $1, you own the thing. It's a buyout option then, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, at least typically it's
It's-
not always constructed that way, I think.
Yeah, it's a lease purchase.
Okay, got it. Just wanted to make sure. So Linda, did that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. So I guess, Eric, at this point, what are you looking for us to do?
So what I wanted to do, so
I think I know where you're going to go with this, but go ahead.
So the first thing is I didn't realize we had to escrow the money. That kind of threw a wrench in my plan. My thought was that as long as we had the money, we know we're going to end up with a building, or correction, a public works equipment fund. We've been funding it at somewhere around the $100,000 to $115,000 range a year. So we can't buy the thing outright, unless we didn't buy anything of capital this year and waited till next year and up to the budget, then it would be possible. So we will have some money left over in the account. If you remember last year, we agreed in this year's budget to purchase the skid steer. The total bill for that should have been about $75,000, but it looks like the invoice they gave us on the vehicle itself was about 10,000 less than they quoted originally. But remember, steel and fuel have come down a lot. So some things are decreasing in price. So we've got to absolutely definitively find out what we're paying for it, because it looks like they're billing us quite a bit less than the PO we signed for the vehicle 6 months ago. So that's one thing. We need to figure out exactly what we have in the account. If we had $58,000 in that account, then with no other oversight, the Board of Selectmen could agree to the purchase of that, I think. I don't think there's anything statutorily that would prevent you from doing it. Because it's basically, although it's next year's budgeted purchase, if you wanted to buy it outright, the only way you could do that would be to recommend to the Board of Selectmen to schedule a public meeting, and then the public would have to vote to approve that purchase, and we'd have to do it out of unexpended fund balance. And that would be doable. I mean, you could do that, but you'd have to, that would be the process. So what I'm trying to do is figure out, do we have the money in that account right now? Because if we do, it's literally a decision of you and the Board of Selectmen to say yes, and then we can purchase it. If we don't, then we got to figure out how to do it, or accept the fact that we're not going to have it for next year. I mean, I think the unfortunate reality is if we don't pull the trigger in the next couple of months, certainly, we're not going to have it for plow season. And the sooner we pull the trigger, the more likely we are to have it available next year.
Okay, yeah, I think, well, there's a couple things going on. We just adopted a purchasing policy, which technically would require this to go out to bid. So I think what we would do is this would probably fall under clause 1.4, which is that exceptions to the policy can be made by a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, as long as it provides a bona fide benefit and be in the best interest of the town that would not otherwise be available under this policy. Given the fact that you can't get a build slot, I think that kind of applies here in a reasonable manner. That would be my take on the procedural aspect of it. So
It is also the state bid. Freightliner is the state awarded contractor.
yeah.
Right.
So it does fall under that.
Right. So that actually falls under the standard, one of the standard exemptions that you have,
Okay.
which is, that is a, it's already a publicly bid, even though we didn't put it out to bid, the state has already put it out to bid. So we do technically, with this purchasing policy, we do technically satisfy this purchasing policy.
Through the state purchasing agency. Okay, yeah, that makes
Correct.
sense. Okay. Yeah. So I guess from that standpoint, you would be looking for us for approval to move forward either on the lease or direct purchase of the vehicle, given that you would feel that you have the available capital funds in the account.
Right. I mean, my suspicion is it would come back to the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance anyway. And what I need to do is I need to figure out, can we actually do this legally with the funds that we have, since we're required to escrow the money without going to public meeting? Because the threshold for a purchase without going to public meeting is about $35,000. However, since this is in a permanent fund for the purchase of capital equipment,
Right.
we're not obligated to that if we have the money in that account. But unfortunately, at this point, I don't know whether we do or not. I think we're going to be close, but I don't know whether we're close above or close below.
Okay. So if is this going to have to come back to the Board of Finance after you figure that out?
I think it's going to have to. What I want to know from the board is that whether you agree that you're not going to require us to send it out to bid if we're piggybacking off a state bid, which your purchasing policy allows you to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, you also have to agree to that. So I don't think it needs an exemption. You just have to be aware that that's what we're doing and that you're okay with that. And what we didn't do this time, because we're going with the same vehicle that we had decided last year when we went through the process, we would consider purchasing. So do you want, you know, we know what we want. Do you then want us to go back and do what we did last year, which is present multiple options that are all, you know, essentially pre-bid somehow or other? Or is this sufficient? It meets the purchasing policy, but the question is, does it meet what you actually want to do? So I think that's really the question in my mind for the Board of Finance right now.
Can you allow me to share my screen and I'll just pop up the purchasing policy so the board can see it and we can refer to it?
Sure.
Joanne? You're on mute.
The only thing I want to make made clear, wasn't there some kind of hold from the Board of Selectmen the other night, Eric? I felt like you're going back to them first. I didn't know it was coming to us. Maybe I misunderstood. So I just want to make sure we're being consistent with what the decision was the other night. I thought you were going back to the January meeting of the Board of Selectmen. for
Yeah,
some-
but
I-
ultimately it's got to go through all three boards.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not jumping a step. I'm happy to listen to this. I read it. I'm, you know, like I said, so, but you're asking us for a decision tonight. When I left the Board of Selectmen the other night, I thought, oh, good, I don't even have to think about my decision till after January, because that's what the Board of Selectmen said. So I personally feel like we're jumping it, but if I'm really wrong, then tell me that. I feel like I thought, but, and Mark, of course I defer to your knowledge.
Well, I don't think, I think it's, you know, it's like Eric said, I don't think we need to wait for the Board of Selectmen to give their approval to the process before we do. You know, we can certainly give our approval to the process as we see fit or lack or not. And then then it would devolve to the Board of Selectmen. They could still basically veto it if you would.
Gotcha.
So,
And I knew this
And-
was a special meeting and then we added things to the agenda and this and that. So okay, thank you
And-
for the clarification.
And Joanne, I'm not even asking the Board of Finance to make a formal motion to approve this. I just don't want to be surprised later and bring it back to you next month and then have you say, oh no, we want 3 competitive bids, or we want the town to put this to
Okay.
RFP.
So
Because
we're deciding the process of what we're doing. I thought we were, sorry, I apologize. I thought I was gonna have to, because I know
Yeah,
there's a lot of
it's a little
unexpected
confusing. Yeah.
funding coming up, you know, with the,
So
Hopefully.
what Eric is asking, and Eric, you can chime in if I'm misunderstanding this, I don't think I am, but what Eric is asking is, are we comfortable with accepting, you know, would we feel comfortable acting on this bid or not acting on it, not voting on it now, but he just wants to know if we would feel comfortable that this bid would fall under this section 3.2 of the purchasing policy. I highlighted the relevant statement here that, you know, exceptions or that you don't have to go out to bid in these cases if
thank you. Yeah,
if it's made through and administered by state, regional, or other municipal purchasing agency, which I think this clearly falls under here,
correct.
in my view.
meaning
Yep.
is this particular bid for this Freightliner truck acceptable to us as is with that? Okay, thank you. I'm not the ultimate decision.
Right, yeah,
Right.
we're not gonna make a decision on whether to make the purchase or not. We don't even know if we can, because if it's
Good, that's all I understood, but good,
Right.
good.
good, no, it's
Okay.
an important point of clarification,
Thank you.
so.
Yeah,
Okay.
so ultimately what I want to know from the board is if we brought this back to you next month and CIP had agreed to the purchase, and the Board of Selectmen was in favor. Whether this, it technically satisfies the policy, but it doesn't say you have to accept this in every case. So if you'll accept what we've already provided when we bring it back, that's question number one. And then question number two, are you okay with us leasing this if we can't afford it? Because it will require us to escrow, almost $60,000 now. And over the 5-year lease, that will increase the cost of that almost $35,000 in interest payments. So those are really the two questions I'm kind of asking the Board of Finance. Are you okay conceptually with leasing? Because the cost of borrowing money is increased. Number one, and are you okay with us using piggybacking on the state bid in this case? Now I'll shut up.
So I'll provide my view to both of those. One is that I'm comfortable with accepting the bid process as gone through the state approved agency here. I'm comfortable. I would be willing to accept the lease also, as long as I think it's within reason. The problem is nobody's really calculated what the effective interest rate is. If it's 15 or 18%, I have a problem with it. If it's 5%, then absolutely, boom, go, So that would be my personal input. So other members of the board, if anybody have any comments or disagreements?
I tend to agree exactly with what you said, Mark. I'm confident with the work they've done, the background they gave us tonight, with accepting this bid and with the exception written into the policy. I'm fine with that. I'm still a little on the fence with, the money overall, but, and I mean, I know it has to be spent. I just, having listened to the other it's one of those things like in your own home. What do you need more? What are you going to spend the money on? Just want to be cognizant that there were other things, with the community center going in, the staffing for the community center, all at the same time with going ahead with getting this whole trucking situation and schedule into play. So say we take on, a 58,000 here and then staffing for there, just other unexpected things. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone else has come to, I don't think we're making the final decision, but I feel like we're sort of going in that route. Like once we, it's hard. It's hard when it's in a non-budget time to make these decisions when you're still in a budget year, in an inflation year, costs are going up year, that kind of thing. We've had to expend extra money in the finance department. Again, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I appreciate all the time and effort, and I understand this kind of thing, but that's my 2 cents.
Is there any member of the board that is not comfortable with potentially proceeding using this bid alone and would not want to recognize this as an exception to the policy as granted under this section? You guys are all comfortable with that?
I'm okay.
Okay.
Since I haven't spoken up, I'll just say that.
Does anybody have a problem with the lease, other than the fact that we don't know what the effective interest rate is?
Do we need to, do we need to express preference at this point to between 4 or 5 years, or, are we not there yet?
I don't think so. I think it's just in principle, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but in principle, you just want to have us understand whether we have concerns about leasing versus outright purchase.
I guess
Correct.
Ideally, I'd like to know what we would save by outright purchase versus lease. And then maybe think about that a little bit. What's the time value of that? What's our likely, is it worth it? But generally speaking, I know towns lease like this all the time. So, conceptually, I'm fine with it. It's whether or not it makes sense. I have this personal preference to just buy stuff, but that's me. I don't know if that
Generally
makes sense
lower,
for the town.
lower cost overall to do so.
Right.
Yes.
So, but again,
But we don't have the money put aside. So
correct.
I get it.
You know, and interest
Right.
rates have been at historic lows. It made a lot of sense. I mean, you know, I financed my last car just because it didn't make sense not to with interest rates the way it was. But
Right.
yeah, with this, so we need to really, I mean, again, we're not voting on whether to proceed or not. It's just in
Right.
theory, with this, does anybody have any concerns about the
I don't
lease?
think we have any option but to go with a lease. I don't think the town can afford to buy it outright. So
Yeah.
I can't even see a world in which we could just have that money. There's just no way. So
Yeah, without
appreciate-
doing some
Without
serious
sacrificing
rejiggering.
other.
Right. We'd have to be moving money around big time in our funds.
Well,
to do
that's
it.
what I
That's
mean,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And it's hard enough to just do little things that we do, so I can't really see that ever happening. But it is gonna cost more, yeah. So that's it, I'm shutting up because I'm,
So it sounds to me, Eric, like the board is generally agreeable that this would be acceptable under the exception policy of the purchasing, or the exception clause in the purchasing policy. And that we don't have major objections to leases as long as it's in the best interest of the town. Meaning
Right,
the
okay.
cost basis can't be excessive, right? It has to be
Right.
reasonable.
Yeah, so so two things. The total additional cost to lease it is about $35,000 over outright purchase.
Okay.
So that's the first number.
Okay.
And if you think about it, if you're talking about a $258,000 purchase price, your first year interest at 5% is going to be almost $13,000, which is saying the interest rate. And if you think about that over a 5-year lease, you know, you can kind of divide that by 2, and then multiply that by 5. And, you know, so that says you're somewhere in the 5% interest rate that you're getting charged for that. I mean,
Yeah, it's
I
probably
calculate it
effectively
more
6 or 7. Yeah. Okay.
right.
So it's
Yeah,
in the
so-
ballpark. It's not,
right.
it's not chump change, but
It's
it's
not-
not excessive.
Right.
Okay.
As far as numbers go, at the end of last year, going into this budget season, we should have had $29,205 in the Public Works Capital Equipment Fund at the end of last year. So since then, we have purchased the Bobcat, which if we went off the PO that we signed, would have been $75,000. So the net result of that leaves us short of the $58,000, but it looks like we're actually getting charged less for the Bobcat, which means we just about have enough in that fund to do it, to purchase it. I can't guarantee that though. We've got to crunch actual numbers as they are today, but we'll get back to you with that as soon as we know. That's basically all I know at this point.
All right. So yeah, and I'm comfortable with the lease under those terms, you know, given if we decide to move forward that, you know, that they don't seem out of all rationality. So if any of the other board members think differently, then, you know, certainly speak up. And again, we're not giving any approval at this point. Eric just wants to understand the board's position on these two topics in terms of our strategy and purchasing approach.
I do have a quick question.
Yep.
I've never leased before, and I was kind of curious if you're in a lease, are the maintenance, repairs, responsibility of the person who has it, the lease, or the company?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's ours.
It is your.
I mean, this is basically the same. We call it a lease, but essentially you're taking out a loan on this thing and agreeing to pay them back. The only difference is you pay them back once a year instead of every month, like most retail consumers do.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, Eric, I'm guessing you have your answer there, that the board seems amenable to the lease and giving reasonable terms and is in agreement that this would fit under the exceptions to the purchasing policy that we've adopted.
Okay. Think I think all we can ask. I would hope that you're going to see this again in January as a fully fleshed proposal for you to agree to with appropriate interest rates, presuming we have the funding to do it.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion on this topic, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 7, approval of the meeting minutes for November 16, 2022. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Louise, any of a second?
Second.
I saw Linda's hand first. Linda, thank you. A second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. The motion passes. Thank you. All right. We'll go on to the next agenda item, which is liaison reports. Does anybody have anything to report? Okay, hearing none.
CIP's next tomorrow, so sorry.
Okay. Item 9, which is board open discussion. Does anybody have anything they want to bring before the board?
I do have one thing to say. I
Yeah.
mean, if the meeting schedules had worked out correctly, we would have brought this to CIP first and then the Board of Selectmen and then you. But it's the Christmas month. Everybody's doing their meetings out of order, so that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
So for that, I apologize.
So I get to talk about this again tomorrow night.
You do.
Okay. I'll just mention, just as part of the board open discussion, that I think we talked about this before, but I do plan on canceling the meeting on the 28th. We've effectively held our monthly meeting tonight. We'll notify, formally, I guess Eric and Kate, and just have their post that change. I think that's all I really wanted to mention in front of the board here. Anything else? Going once. Okay, we'll go on to public speak on agenda item 10. I don't know that we have any members of the public any longer.
Technically Bill, I suppose, but I think we've already heard from
Yep.
him.
Bill, you have anything to add? No. Okay, you're muted. Okay. Looked like no. So. Okay,
Sorry, no.
thank you. Agenda item 11 is adjournment. Does anybody care to make a motion to adjourn? Okay, Linda, you're muted, but it looked like you wanted to make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Linda makes a motion to adjourn and Louise seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, no extensions. Very good. Thank you, everybody. So if I don't speak to you all before the end of the year, have a wonderful new year, great holiday season, and thank you for your help and participation. Bill, welcome once again. So
Thank you for your vote of confidence.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. See you in the new year.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas.
Thank you and congratulations.